Good evening, everybody. It is the June 4th, 2026 meeting of the Somerville Planning Board. I am Mike Capuano. I am the chairman of the planning board. With me tonight is our vice chair, Amelia Aboff, our clerk, Jahan Habib, our members, Lynn Richards, Michael McNeely, and Luke Schuster. We have a quorum. For the purpose of the record, we also have, at least on video, two members of our UDC who will be joining us for a point of discussion later this evening. I believe they do currently or will soon have a quorum, so we can deal with that agenda item when it comes up. But pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this meeting of the Planning Board is being conducted via remote participation. A video recording of the proceedings will be available on the city's meetings and events page or by emailing planningboard@somervillema.gov. This meeting is being recorded. The first item on the planning board's agenda is the meeting minutes draft of May 7th, 2026. Does anybody have any suggested revisions, comments, amendments to the draft meeting minutes of May 7th? Okay. Seeing none, the chair moves to adopt the draft meeting minutes of May 7 as the final minutes of the planning board. Alvaro, please call the roll.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Michael Capuano.
We have meeting minutes. Next up, we have a number of items on our public hearings agenda. 222 Broadway has previously been continued to July 16, 2026. The next item we have on our agenda is 1 McGrath Highway. I don't believe that has actually been read into the record yet, has it? Alvaro, can you confirm?
It has been read into the record. However,
And
they
it's
were
been continued
continued for
to
June
tonight.
4th. Yep,
Yep.
it has to be
It's
continued.
continued tonight. They have requested a further continuance to June 18, 2026. Chair moves to continue that agenda item to June 18, seconded by Amelia. Roll call, please.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Michael Capuano.
Right. That agenda item is continued. The next is 120 Middlesex Avenue. I do not believe this has yet been read in. Can you confirm?
No, it was read into the record last meeting, continued to this meeting, and now another continue is requested.
Apologies. It was a really long meeting last time. Okay, the chair moves to continue the continuance to June 18, 2026, seconded by Amelia. Roll call.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Coralie Cooper. Oh, sorry, Michael McNeely,
Aye.
It's gonna be a long wait.
Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Michael Capuano.
All right, that's continued. The next item on our agenda is 32 Webster Avenue, which has previously been opened. It is the discretion of the chair to modify the agenda. This will be held until after we go through our other business. Our other business, because we have members of our UDC with us, as well as maybe Sarah. Knows? Sarah, yeah. To discuss with the UDC, who may or may not have a quorum, and I would like to welcome them aboard, our urban design framework. So what I'd like to do now is to have Sarah say hello and to have any and all members of our UDC introduce themselves for the purpose of the public and also the purpose of the planning board, because we've received reports from you all, but have not always met all of you. So it's a really nice kind of a collaboration between the two boards to have a discussion and a presentation by Sarah. So if I could please ask the members of the UDC to introduce themselves, and we can all contrarily introduce ourselves as well.
Mr. Chair, if you're willing to let me go first, I will just say I am hoping that the UDC and the planning board um, can have their discussion, and I am here to take notes and provide additional information this evening rather than do a full presentation. But I am here should any of you need me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I know that part of our packet for tonight included the presentation that I believe you gave quite a while ago. And I don't know if that's been amended since we last discussed it, but if there is an amendment to that that you'd like to address, we're happy to take that up. Otherwise, I'm more than happy to just have a general discussion by and between members of this board and the UDC.
Yeah, there has not been an update to either the document. We just wanted to make sure that before we made any changes that the planning board and the UDC were comfortable with the path forward.
I appreciate it very much, Sarah, and stay on cycle in case we have some questions. Okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Could I please, as the chairman running this particular meeting, ask for the chairperson of the UDC to introduce themselves and their committee members, and please go around the room. Would love to meet you all.
So the Somerville zoning ordinance designates the chair as Sarah and the head of PSF. So we do not have a chair of our own membership. But I can start.
Can I ask you to take
Sure.
can I ask you to take
Yeah.
take lead after that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Andrew Arbaugh. I have been a member of the Urban Design Commission since it was established in 2020. Before that, I was a member of the Design Review Committee as well. I'm a principal landscape architect at Copley Wolf, a landscape architecture firm in Boston, and have lived in Somerville for about 20 years.
Yelling at somebody, Andrew. Who's next?
Go for it, Tim.
Well, hello. Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. Look forward to the discussion. I'm Tim Talon, joined the Urban Design Commission, I think in 2021, in its most recent iteration. And I've also lived in Somerville about 20 years. I'm a vice president and architect with Elkis Manfredi Architects in Boston.
And I think I'm the last one here to introduce myself. I'm Deborah Fennick. I am a resident of Davis Square. I have been on the UDC since its inception, earlier, I guess, this decade. And I've been on the Urban Design Review since, Assembly Square. So I was involved with the planning of Assembly Square. So I go way back. And yes, and continuous involvement from that period of time. I have my own practice, Fennick McCready Architecture, an architecture group in Boston.
All of you, thank you very much for joining us and welcome. I'm gonna start just because we've had some kind of Venn diagram connections, but we haven't having a meeting like this. So I will start. I'm Mike Capuano. I'm the chairman of the planning board here. I have been a resident of the city of Somerville since October 6, 1980, on the day that I was born. I left for 4 years to go to college in Cambridge, and then I came right back. And so I have been a member of the planning board since 2008, the year after I graduated from law school. And I have kind of worked my way through the ranks and seeing Deborah, as you know, Union Square, Assembly Square, and kind of all the way through where we are today. And I have a healthy respect for all of your expertise collectively, because I am just a lawyer. My primary job is a deputy general counsel at the Executive Office of Health and Human Services. So I do not do this professionally. I do this as a labor of love. And so it's something that I've learned about over the last almost 20 years. And it's something that brings me back to the table day in and day out because I love this city and I love what we're doing with it. And I want to make sure that we continue for the next 20 to 40 to 100 years to make sure that this is a place that people want to be. And so that is kind of how I fashion myself. I would like to kick it off then to Amelia to just introduce herself as the vice chair.
Thanks, Mike. I am the vice chair of the planning board and have been here for 10 years and on the board for, I think, almost 7. So many fewer years than Mike, but nonetheless getting up there. And I've met a couple of you, I think, in private practice, but wonderful to be connected in this way and appreciate the opportunity for the discussion. Jahan?
Thank you so much. My name is Jahan Habib. I'm the clerk of the planning board. I have been a Somerville resident for about 12 years. Been on the planning board since 2020, I believe. I live close to the Porter Square, Spring Hill area. My background in terms of work is in accounting and finance, mostly higher ed, not-for-profit institutions. Michael McNeely, please.
Sure. I'm Michael. I'm just a boring old regular member of the planning board. I've been on the board for about 3 years now. I think Sarah will have to double check me on that. And I live over in Davis Square as well. It's really great to meet you all, and I really appreciate the fact that you guys joined for an extra meeting on top of your regular meetings that you guys already have. So thank you. I'll pass it over to Luke.
Thanks, Michael. Michael, you moved to Davis. I didn't realize that.
I did. You haven't seen me around as much. I know.
That explains it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Michael and I started same cycle roughly 3 years ago. I live in Lagoon Square. Good to meet folks. It's cool that we're doing this meeting. My day job, I do public policy research. I lead a small think tank called Boston Indicators. We do a wide range of public interest research, but more and more on housing as the housing affordability crisis has gotten worse. I'll leave it at that and pass it to Lynn.
Thanks, Luke. So, Michael, you moved to Davis Square, which is why I've been seeing you all over.
That's right. That's right.
So I'm Lynn
Left
Richards.
out.
I've spent the last the newest resident to Somerville. I moved here almost 3 years ago, 2 years and 11 months. George and Sarah both pinged me as soon as I moved here and said, now you've got to get involved. So I've been part of the planning board for almost 2 years. By profession, I've spent the last 25 years working with federal, state, and local governments on how to create more walkable, livable, sustainable communities. Most recently, I was the president and CEO of the Congress for the New Urbanism. So for you architect folks, I will say I'm form agnostic or design agnostic. It's how the building meets the street. So don't peg me as a traditionalist. I think that's it. I think we've done it all, and Coralie's not here.
She's not, but she may be soon.
Okay.
So I want to start off. So we do have members of the public, I believe, who are here. This is not by and between the boards and the public. This is an internal discussion between the planning board and the UDC on not taking any votes tonight on how Sarah, I'm hoping you might be able to clarify exactly what the purpose is outside of discussing the plan that was put forward for the arts and I'm gonna say arts and entertainment, that's not wrong. The district on
Innovation.
Innovation.
Arts and innovation. Yes, thank you. So there were the UDC reviewed the draft pretty extensively and had made some comments to recommendations that were presented to the planning board in 2 memos. Some of them were the initial memo was sort of fairly broad with such comments as the district boundary should be tightened up to reflect the same boundary as the zoning district and the key areas of the arts and innovation sub area of the master plan district. Sorry, I know that was a mouthful. I'm trying not to speak in acronyms.
My entire life is acronyms, and I don't understand what half of them mean.
Oh, I would help if I wasn't stepping on pieces of paper. So that was sort of one of the bigger broad brush comments, and then they dug into the architectural design and the integration. Obviously, an urban design commission is very, very focused on the public realm. With details about the architectural guidelines and how the building should meet the street. And so the second memo went into a lot of bullet points of their recommendations to changes and clarifications there. So a lot of those were adds or edits that were quite specific. So I think it's how we want to go forward with this conversation. I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you, how we sort of tailor this discussion.
So Sarah, I'm going to start off having reviewed some of the materials that UDC has presented to us. My initial question is, why is it that the boundaries don't align?
Originally, it was looking at a potential bigger area for the arts and innovation. However,
and then it's not something that came to fruition.
No, the likelihood of that happening with some of the smaller property owners is sort of a little bit slim, but understanding how the master plan district interacts with its neighbors was one of the initial thoughts that we had when drafting the urban design framework. But to the UDC's point, sort of there's not enough language or actual detail about how those pieces would interact with the district to make it really effective. So that was the recommendation of shrinking the boundary.
Yeah, because seeing that, Amelia, I do recognize your hand. I'm going to call you in just 1 second. I just want to have one follow-up. How is it then, Sarah? Hey, by the way, I would like to welcome to our meeting Coralie Cooper, who is one of our members of the planning board. We did a little round robin of introduction. And Sarah, before I offer my follow-up question on that, I do want to just have Coralie introduce herself really quickly to members of the UDC, just who you are, what your deal is, and how you bring yourself to us tonight.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good to meet everybody. I'm relatively new to the planning board. I started in March, and I have a master's degree in city planning from MIT, and I worked for many years as a regional planner on issues around air pollution, but also safety, bike safety, pedestrian safety. So, in a nutshell, that's my background.
Thank you, Coralie. Just for I know you had to join us a little bit later, but what we're talking about is the UDC's memoranda to the planning board and to staff about some of the arts and innovation districts that we had looked at. And so my follow-up question to Sarah is, based on what you just said, is there a plan to further tailor the plan to some of what UDC has suggested, which in my simple-brained mind makes sense.
Absolutely. I think if the planning board in general is on board with changing the boundary, I believe staff is supportive of that. We completely understood the point that was made and agree.
So, I ask questions like a lawyer. Is there a reason not to agree with that? Is there a reason that staff put forward that UDC might not have identified that would have supported the position that you put on paper?
Um,
If the answer is no, the answer is no. That's fine.
no, I think the answer is no. It was sort of, I think it was just staff would have liked to have examined the larger area, but as we've all discussed before, the process for this district sort of happened in a backwoods fashion.
We are what we are, and maybe at some point in the future we can have a broader re-examination of the larger area. But it doesn't seem like that's where we are today, and that's okay. Uh, looking at Union Square, looking just at the people who were on my Zoom here, we've had discussions on rezoning of Union Square at least 3 times that I'm aware of, so we can revisit things. So that was the initial question that I had, and I appreciate your kind of engaging with us on that one, Sarah. Amelia, you had your hand up a minute ago. Do you still have a question, or did I ask what you were going to ask?
I don't know if others would benefit from this, so it's mostly a question. Would it be useful for Sarah to refresh us on sort of the enforceability and the function of this document as we discuss changes to it? I can't recall if Coralie was here yet at the time that we last touched on that topic.
Point. Yeah, let's talk about what it is that we are talking about and what it means and what it does and who has say and how it can be modified and how binding it is.
Thank you. So an urban design framework in the simplest terms is a neighborhood plan light. It is a document that's adopted in a situation where there isn't a full neighborhood plan in place. And it is to provide the planning board and the urban design commission a set of parameters for reviewing projects that come forward in the designated area. So that would be for the Urban Design Commission. Obviously, it's the public realm. It is the civic spaces. It is, to some degree, architectural design. And it is a document that is adopted by the planning board, as I said, to guide those development projects as they come forward. So is that a good overview?
Thank you.
So here's how I'm gonna work this. This is interesting. I haven't had a joint meeting like this. So I see Tim's hand, I see Lynn's hand. And by the way, Tim, I don't know if you're familiar with the policies and practices of the planning board. I prefer your little Simpsons hand because it makes it a little easier for me to see on the side. But I also see Lynn. So let me do this. Let me call on you first, Tim, because I saw you first. This is an open discussion between all of us. So there is kind of no format and no structure. But I would love your weigh in and anything else that you'd like to say. And then Lynn, we can have you after that.
Sure. So just to add to Sarah's comments, my understanding as well is that the design guidelines and the kind of specific guidelines that are in this document are what a proposed master plan special permit would be evaluated against. Is that right, Sarah? And that's how it's intended to apply?
Through the chair, it's not just a master plan special permit. It is also any individual buildings. So it is
It's
all
both.
of that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then I think just one other thing that we talked about as an urban design commission, it's a way of conveying information to the design team that'll eventually be putting together that master plan special permit application and coming up with the actual physical design of the district and then future buildings to convey what we as a city really care about and want them to focus on and address.
Tim, thank you very much. And so what I'll do after I kind of get everybody's questions and comments in is I would love to get the weigh in of the UDC on any aspects of those memoranda that we might not have addressed tonight that you all think is particularly important for us to look at that we haven't discussed. So let's go to Lynn next for her insight questions and things like that.
Michael, it's a add-on to what you were discussing about the boundary changing. So the question that I have is around that primary residential block that is just north of the district. And if it was a neighborhood plan, I would be less concerned about it, because a lot of Somerville neighborhoods are very complementary. But this is an arts and innovation district, and so maybe this is rendered moot because we are now talking about expanding the boundary. But Sarah, do you know what residential? I don't have a map in front of me. You've got the school on one side, but it's there are a bunch of houses in there. So let's go forward 5 years and somebody sells a house and somebody wants to move in that and wants to have a mixed use something that corresponds and complements the arts and innovation district. It is technically outside of the district, but it's adjacent. And I think of the same thing as the CVS that's on the other side of the I think Park Street, right? So properties that are adjacent, right? Like almost immediately adjacent seems to me that even if you don't extend like even if they're outside of this new boundary because it's the Arts and Innovation District and they're adjacent, we're not talking near, we're talking adjacent, that maybe you can add language to the report that talks about adjacent properties that as they come up, if they want to follow the design guidelines associated with the arts and like I'm not sure how you would do it, but I just think that there are a number of redevelopment opportunities, and this arts and innovation district is primarily around, near as I can tell, one particular developer. And if it's successful, it's going to keep growing a little bit. And are we going to come back and keep and modifying this? And so why not give our future selves a gift and talk about adjacent properties and how they might be served by these guidelines? Not required, but something. I mean, it's already pretty fuzzy language. Like these aren't required. It's not a regulation. This is to provide guidance to the design, guidance to the planning. So, gift to future selves. How might we address adjacent properties that want to be part of this district? I don't know. Something like that. That's my question.
Yeah, through the chair. Um it's an interesting approach. And I think we can add language to encourage what I would call voluntary compliance or adoption or inclusion. Um, we can't, knowing that, I mean, anybody at any time could, sort of an immediate abutter can apply to the city council and say, hey, I want to be included in the arts and innovation master plan. district and then would automatically apply. But I think sort of encouraging voluntary inclusion is something that we can certainly add language to.
Yeah, there could be, I would imagine, a section at the very end that talks about adjacent or budding properties and how voluntary compliance would be welcomed, or I mean, you choose the words, but something along
Yeah.
those lines. So if I don't know if it's a CVS or Walgreens, but you know, that drugstore right there
Yep,
turning over,
absolutely.
or some of the residential, I don't think the school's going anywhere, nor should it, but you know, places evolve,
Yeah.
and we to me the document would have greater longevity if it extended beyond just this one particular development, even though it's multiple phases and it's really large, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's I don't see a problem with that. I sort of we'll look into that and talk about it.
all
So
right, thank you, ma'am.
yeah, of course.
And I don't want to step on any further questions you have, but uh, can we move on to the next person? Do you have more?
Oh, me? Yeah, move on. I might have another question later on, but that was the one that I wrote down while you were talking.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, as you guys know, for these types of discussions, um, yeah, people often have multiple questions. I don't want to make sure that I move on from somebody and we're like, wait, no, there's more. But wait, there's more. So I do see Corley's Simpson's hand, so I will absolutely recognize you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Um, I have a question going back to our discussion about the trying to separate truck traffic from pedestrian and cyclists and people using the space generally, like a music way. In the UDC discussion, there was I listened in on your discussion and you talked a bit about kind of the need to um, give a little bit of direction to the developers so that they wouldn't just go and put a loading dock, you know, at the end of Preparesy or wherever was most convenient. But so I wanted to ask, and forgive me, this is a dumb question, but is it possible to ask that I know that it's very difficult to get the road extended along the railroad tracks because the footprint of one or two of the buildings is too close to the tracks to allow that. But is it possible to ask that the footprint be changed so that the road could go along the back? It just seems that there might be quite a bit of truck traffic, and settling that issue might be important for the space in the end.
Through you, Mr. Chair, as I understand it, there are a couple of challenges. So, for example, the parcel that's number one in the master plan district is very, very narrow. So to be able to redevelop that with an efficient floor plate, it is difficult to get an alley back there because of the depth of that floor plate. Now, whether that can be done as part of the building and sort of incorporated so it's only compromising the first and second floors, or given the floor to floor heights that were initially discussed that are super tall, I think those would accommodate trucks anyway. I'm not sure, but that is something that would happen at the master plan special permit level, not necessarily at the urban design framework. We can, however, on the deeper block that is, as you mentioned, sort of where Music Alley is, that does have enough depth to have a rear alley that could be accessed off Dane Street, basically where the current parking deck comes off of Dane Street to the back of the sort of where Greentown Labs is. that I think is possible. I would like to circle back with the mobility team to make sure that, sort of what we're specifically um, recommending or including as guidelines for access points. So if there is a way to get the truck access points from Park Street into the complex or Dane Street into the complex, I'll talk to them and see what we can do there. I do know that, like I said, that block number one that's so thin and sort of landlocked is the challenging one. But that is something that, sort of could be solved at the master plan special permit level. And what we propose is the urban design framework might be able to have the points of access recommended.
Okay, great. Thank you. And it sounds like then we get to the master plan stage, we can talk about it again.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
See Michael first, and Amelia, I'll let you ask your follow-up after that. How's that?
Quickest draw. Well, first, just want to make an administrative point. I do have a conflict at 7 p.m. So if I just suddenly call off, it's not because I'm offended by the conversation. It's just I've got a conflict. Second is
You're done. You're out.
During my intro was that I actually am an infrastructure developer, namely focused on power infrastructure. And so when we get applications in for new buildings, I spend a lot of time looking at your comments when we get your memos. And so I really appreciate that you brought up some questions around massing and scale in particular. And I want to just invite the UDC to provide a little bit more color on what type of guidance you might be looking for from staff and from others involved in the project, and also invite staff to maybe give an update if there has been any more on the massing and scale guidance, because I would love UDC to be empowered in a way that they can make really good judgment and suggestions, such that it makes our life easier at a later stage in the process as well. I think I suggest the UDC maybe start and then yeah.
Tim or Deborah as the architects, you guys want to take this one and I'll.
Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, Tim, please.
Sure. So I think one of the things, just to start, that we identified was that as the document's currently written, it's difficult to make recommendations related to massing and scale because the overall scale of the buildings isn't represented three-dimensionally within it. And that's not to say that the document's intended to be prescriptive about overall form. What's eventually proposed in a master plan special permit could differ from what's allowed by zoning. But neighborhood plans, Union Square neighborhood plan, Gilman Square neighborhood plan, all included some three-dimensional representation of potential building forms, and then that allowed for specific recommendations about building massing and public space around it to be developed.
Do we just talk, or I don't really know how this works?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're just chatting.
Cool. And the question was not about civic spaces, but I'll jump in as the landscape architect. The Somerville zoning ordinance is pretty prescriptive in terms of what it wants from civic spaces and streetscapes. And one of the places where this document is a little bit challenged, I approach it as from the perspective of somebody who would be handed this and then be asked to design that park or that streetscape. It's starting to give sort of a vision or what it wants to be, and that part is really important for the documentation. But the Somerville zoning ordinance is so prescriptive that some of the language that is in here is not specific enough to tell me why you want me to change it off of the ordinance in the first place. So it's a weird document because it kind of needs to do both. It needs to give me a vision, but then it also needs to tell me where I can vary from the very prescriptive code that I'm working with in anyway. And it doesn't quite do that second part at all. It says things like I want wide sidewalks, but what is a wide sidewalk? That doesn't, it's a meaningless designation, stuff like that.
Andrew, can I ask you a follow-up on kind of your critique of what was presented? Do you think that your recommendation to us and your memo to us addresses that issue in specificity to the point where you would feel comfortable with that? Or do you want to make some further recommendations on how we can view that specific criteria?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that there would need to be some amount of dimensionality actually baked into it. So if you want a wide sidewalk, you need to tell me that that is a 15-foot sidewalk compared to the 12-foot that the SEO says. Things like that, like the places where you want us to vary from the SEO should be called out really specifically. And the other part that I was kind of challenged with in this documentation is that it doesn't reference the SEO at all. It kind of nods towards the native plant ordinance, but amalgamating what all the other documents that you guys want us to reference as part of this would be incredibly helpful within this document as a guideline itself, because otherwise you just can't kind of cherry pick all of these documents and try to come up with the thing that you guys want us to theoretically design towards.
I appreciate that. And Sarah, what I'd like to do for this document and in the future is, particularly with the issue that's being kind of raised now, is where Andrew is a landscape architect and looks at these things. One of my concerns is and always has been, open and green space in the city and how we use it and how we maximize it. And if there is a better way to articulate that in our zoning, I certainly would welcome some of those very specific recommendations for somebody who might have to do this for a living and follow what we say. So if the concern is what we're saying isn't specific enough and it doesn't point people in the direction that they need to be pointed in, maybe we should look at trying to fix that both for this and going forward. Is that something that maybe I'm not understanding in the most appropriate way? Is what he's saying seems to make quite a bit of sense to me.
There are some, we being PPZ, are aware that PSAF, Public Space and Urban Forestry Division, wants to revisit parts of the green score requirements. I personally don't know what the schedule is on that at the moment, but that is something that is on our list of amendments to be looked at. And I think to sort of, that is probably something that we can, sort of vet with Andrew and others as we get into that project. The other thing that I want to point out is that we are coming up on, I know for those of us who went through the process, Summer Vision 2040 feels fairly recent, but we are coming to the point that we need to think about Summer Vision 2050. So within the next couple of years, sort of we'll be updating, doing a rewrite of the comprehensive plan. And so from a citywide perspective, to your point about open space and tree cover, as well as plenty of other sustainability issues, that's going to be coming forward as a project in the next few years. I think it's realistically probably going to start at the end of 27 or maybe the beginning of 2028.
Some of my
But
colleagues who I think would be really well suited to that. I was on 2020, Amelia was on 2030, I believe. So we can do 2050, so 2040, whatever the heck it was. We can do 2050 soon. One thing that as you bring it up, Sarah, now that I'm kind of thinking of it, is I would love to have some sort of a summary and a report of when we came up with 20, as we were in 2026, as we came up with 2030. In 2026, where are we on some of those goals? Obviously things have changed, but we did have kind of markers in place and goals in place. And as it related to those goals that may or may not have changed, or may have changed somewhat and expanded or retracted, like where are we now? This is not exactly what we're talking about tonight, but you brought it up, so I'm kind of curious.
that'll teach me. Um, the
Don't open the door, counselor.
So when the process to move from 2030 to 2040 was done, there was a check at that point in time, and a report. It can probably still be found on the city website somewhere. But obviously that has changed since. So we will do something similar once we kick off to understand where our because the baseline moves, obviously, to understand where we are before we get into any of the full detail of updating the comp plan. So I can't answer that right now, but
I didn't
we will
anticipate that
do
you
it.
would be able to. How dare you? But no, that's something that I kind of have in the back of my mind is kind of where are we based on where we wanted to be 6 years ago, 8 years ago,
Yeah.
in context with where we've decided we would like to be, in 15 years. So that's fine. And I appreciate the concern about some of the green and open space discussions. The other question I have, and I don't know how great of a marker it is, but when was the last time we got Tree City USA? I think it might have been a little while. We were getting it hand over fist in the 1990s. So that was, to me, a point of pride.
And I believe our planting program has actually increased since then. So that's a good question. Maybe everybody else stepped up their game and we are merely average now. So I am I am completely speculating right now.
I don't like being average because I'm looking around right now. I'm under a complete tree canopy and I love it. And we should have more of that in the city. Anyway, so here's what I would ask of where we kind of are with the existing agenda item. Who else on the planning board has questions? And if the answer is the planning board is good, let me do a quick assessment. Amelia, yeah, sure.
I was just wondering if we could spend a moment on the UDC's recommendations about the overall building typologies in this district. I feel like in my initial round of comments, I had discussed some incompatibility between, I think, our sustainability goals and the vision that we originally articulated. The UDC did a wonderful job in their memo of, I think, putting better language to some of those same items. But overall, this is a document that I think this is a place where I think the document struggles, and that there are a set of conceptual plans out there. I think that they were taken into consideration when reflecting back something in this document, and then if you look at the document with fresh eyes, it's sort of different. Like there should be more variation, there should be this, there should be that. And would love to just spend a minute on discussion of how we are responding to the developer's intention for the buildings in this district, while also incorporating the UDC's, I think, very mindful feedback on sort of variety and human scale and streetscape interaction. That was incredibly open-ended for anyone to take. Sorry, there's not really a question in there.
would like to take that because what I think, Amelia, is yours dovetails into the question that I had, which was also very open-ended. Um, is there anything the planning board hasn't really discussed that that the UDC feels that their report has been other aspects that you really want to raise with us? I think Amelia's question is one of those, but you all had quite a detailed report back to us, and it involved more than what we talked about tonight. I want to make sure that we're having a robust discussion on both what we care about and also what you care about.
Yeah. Oh.
So let's go with Amelia's question first. If anybody has a direct response to her,
I think Deborah does.
Yeah.
I don't know who it's responding to right now. Actually, our feedback was pretty conceptual, so like that was the next, and that was the reasonable step. We were reacting to a document and felt that there were, in some ways, it was very prescriptive about things that sort of oriented more towards residential development than, an innovation district. And we're trying to describe a way that this district would be unique in Somerville, that the quality of it didn't follow the prescription that you do, we do for housing in residential districts, that it would be something that would be very friendly to entrepreneurs, so that it's very likely that the spaces that would get built would be large scale and accommodating to people with money, that can afford, to join, be a part of the project. But it was really important that those startups, which the city has a history of seeing, and then how does that get translated into architectural expression? So there was the concept of uniform floor levels, which high floor levels. Maybe that doesn't make sense for the kinds of entrepreneurialism that's happening or that will need to happen. So we were interested. So we put those what do you call it, values forward that don't yet have a lot of prescription in them, but we felt that. So it's like we felt that was the next step for the document as we saw it. Does that make sense? Does it answer anybody's question?
That was a great elaboration. Thank you.
I also respect, Deborah, your reflection of the fact that this is a generalized, theorized response to questions. I was like, you would be a great lawyer too.
I don't know about that.
Let's make sure that everybody has had their opportunity to kind of weigh in here before we kind of conclude this, because this is I will say to city staff here, I really appreciate the collaboration between these boards. We don't often get this. We get this sometimes with the land use committee, when it's somebody else's idea and we get to weigh in on occasion. But this, I think, has been really helpful and valuable in the way that I view what we're looking at. So to the extent that we can do more of these collaborations, both online and for a social hour or something, let's work on how to do that.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I'm down.
Just two things.
Yeah, Deb.
Speaking of conceptual discussions, one of the things, just going back to our earlier conversation, we talked a lot about was what is the vision for this district? And like Deborah described, what makes this unique in Somerville and unique, throughout the country, a unique place. We talked about, the word that's used to describe this, whether it's a campus or a district or a neighborhood. And I think we shied away from the use of the word campus because it really implies something that's separate from what's around it. And I think what ultimately we want this place to be is something that feels like it's integrated into what's around it, where the people that live around it feel welcome going there and they feel connected to it. So I think one of the things, and maybe this is just a comment for staff, but would be helpful is more discussion within the document of, because the document's very focused on what would be built within this area itself, but the relationship between what gets built here and the surrounding properties. And also just the character of streets and streetscapes and how they feel continuous and connected and inviting.
Yeah, ditto on the civic space. Like the SEO says this is a neighborhood park. It does all of these things. What is the really awesome thing that this one needs to do while checking all of the other boxes is a little bit less amorphous, or more amorphous, sorry. So like tell me, really specifically, like this is arts innovation. That means we need to provide this thing and and make it something that's special and that's not everywhere else in the city of Somerville, because a lot of these pops parks are starting to look pretty similar. And it would be great to understand how this one is going to distinguish and differentiate itself.
Good. Well, so anybody else before we take probably like a 5-minute recess and move on to the remainder of the planning board's agenda? Does anybody have anything they'd like to add? And Sarah, what I'll ask of you after you take your notes, is what are you expecting out of the planning board in the coming weeks? Is this a vote to adopt? Is this just a general vote of support for a particular plan? What is the planning board's deliberative here?
The if the planning board is comfortable with us making the changes based on the Urban Design Commission's recommendations, we'll need to take some time and modify and update the document, change all the diagrams for the boundaries. So that will take a little bit of time. But then the next step would be for us to bring you a updated document, and then eventually take a vote to adopt.
So we're not in the beginning part of the process, we're in the meat of the process. So we're not at a deadline where we need to take an action within, like, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months. We need to look at how you might want to revisit the document that was presented to us based on this meeting. And we can take a look at it and vote to adopt it.
Exactly.
Okay. Because we don't see this too often. So I want to make sure we know what it is that we're looking at, what we need to do. So.
Yeah, no, it'll ultimately be adoption, and I think we've got to do obviously some rewriting and rework based on the input that we've received so far first.
Okay, let's move forward on that. And when you feel like you're ready to come back to us with some of these revisions based on the discussion that we had tonight, love to have it. And honestly, love to have the UDC back as well to make sure that we're kind of generally aligned with these things. All right. So it's 7:02. We will have one more item on our agenda, but what I'm going to do first is thank the members of the UDC who took time out of their evening tonight to join us, and Sarah as well, out of her evening to join us. And I will let the planning board for right now do a quick 5-minute recess. just so we can kind of reset and come back to our last agenda item, which is a case that we previously opened and heard a few weeks ago, over on Webster Avenue. So thank you, everybody. The planning board will be in recess until it's 7:02. I'm going to say 7:07. Okay?
Okay, thank you. And it was great to
See you
meet you
soon.
all.
Thanks,
Yeah,
UDC
thank
You as
you.
well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh,
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Yet who of you was giving me crap about drinking Poland Springs early, but here's my Pola. I brought it back, super local. I went from Maine to Worcester. It's fine. Man, it's all blurred. Hey, hang on, what flavor is that? What do you got? You're mute. You're on mute.
Black cherry.
I'm drinking the same thing. I like black cherry. There are a few flavors that I don't like. I think they have a tangerine flavor. I don't like it.
It was on sale at Costco. What can I say?
Oh, dude, you gotta buy your cans of water at Costco. It's a great deal.
I use my Soda Stream a lot for fizzy water, but there's just
You
something
don't like
about
that? I
like
looked at that a while ago and I wasn't sure if I was gonna like something like that. I felt it was, I don't know, you have to
it's
clean it, all that stuff.
it's 30. Well, I've never cleaned my bottles, so
Ooh.
because well, it's just water.
Yeah, they collect things. Biology is a thing.
I've never
I
cleaned ours either.
Oh, excellent. I'm not alone.
All right. Well,
But it's
I will
35 cents.
I will see you both at Mass General at some point.
Yeah. But I'm not sure I mean, it is cheaper. It's 35 cents like for 12 ounces or something like that. It's not it's not ridiculously cheap because the canisters cost so much.
I do my cans of water from Costco and from the Ocean State Job Lot.
Mm.
But, okay. I don't know. I think Michael said he had a drop at 7. So we have Luke. I think this is everybody that we're going to have. And Oliver, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay. Can we bring us back on the record, please?
Yes, we're back on the record.
Okay. Planning board at 7:09 p.m. is back on the record, and we have one final case on our agenda, which is 32 Webster Avenue. It was previously opened, previously presented, previously uh, through testimony. Planning board had some comments and sent the applicant back to come back with some response to the concerns that we had about this particular application. So I would welcome the applicant, their team, their representative, whomever it might be, to be unmuted and share their screen. And also, Alvaro, if you can give us a quick rundown based on the last meeting that we had on some of what the planning board was looking for from the particular applicant, so that we can all be on the same page as to what we're looking for.
Yes. So for anybody else in the applicant team, if they can raise their hand, I'll promote them to panelist. Um, but just to um, be on the same page, the hearing was open on the 21st, and I believe that there was comments from the planning board regarding the bedroom count and mix and bicycle parking. Um, and so the applicant has submitted updated plans which were shared uh, last Friday. And Kate Luster, who is the planner of the case, if she has anything to add, I'll pass it on to her.
Hi, thanks, Alvaro. I think you had also requested, the planning board had also requested the additional design options that the applicant had originally presented to the Urban Design Commission.
Who may or may not still be in residence, they may have logged off, but it doesn't look they're here anymore, but they were here. Okay, wonderful. So thank you all for that kind of background, both for the planning board and for members of the public as to where we were on this. As I recall, this case was opened at around 9:30 at night a few weeks ago, and we were all a little bit, you know, a little bit tired, a little bit punchy. But at the same time, I think we had a positive discussion. I do see Luke's hand before we commence this aspect of the planning board meeting.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just want to be quick. I missed the meeting, but watched the full video of this case and everything else that was on the agenda and submitted my affidavit stating so I can participate now. Thanks.
Thank you, Luke, for bringing us up to speed on that one. So what I'd like to do is invite the applicant team to kind of address some of the concerns that the planning board had at the last meeting and see kind of where we're sitting on it now a few weeks later at a much more agreeable time of the night.
Great. Hello, everyone. Ryan Wittig, 32 Webster Holdings, part of Kinvara Capital. I didn't mention this in our last meeting, but our offices are at 667 Somerville Ave in Somerville. So we go into work every day in Somerville. We've done a few projects in Somerville over the years. You'll be seeing some more of us on some other projects in the very near future. So just as a little background, we're located in Somerville. We've lived in Somerville. We've been doing business in Somerville for quite some time. In the last meeting, we heard your feedback on 3 points. Number one being you wanted to see some more design ideas and concepts from us, which we're prepared to discuss. You had some concerns about our bike parking, which we've redesigned as well and prepared to discuss that as well. And you also wanted to have a discussion around incorporating 3 bedrooms into our mix, which we will also discuss. So with that being said, I'll let Phil Sema, our architect from Balance Architects, kick things off. And our goal for tonight is to take this from hated it to at least 2 snaps.
Very much appreciated.
Maybe we can get a twist, and if I don't know if we'll get a kiss, but we'll take 2 snaps.
Yeah, very, very much appreciate you guys working with us for sure. This is as you've been before us before and will be before us again. This is kind of how we work, is a project that doesn't necessarily meet what we're expecting. A kind of a collaborative process to get to a place where we can truly be we and the neighborhood can be supportive of what you're presenting, because I don't, as one member, want to vote no on everything. I voted no very infrequently. I like to vote yes. I like to bring things forward. I think our members and my colleagues feel generally the same way, but it has to be something that we collectively feel good about. So thank you. Let's see where we're at.
Great.
Good.
Well, thanks everyone. Phil Sema from Balance Architects. Just to reorient, we're on the corner of Webster and Newton. So pretty prominent corner up there. First thing I'll go over is the bike and trash room that was modified. So I'll just zoom in a little bit. So we've now combined the bike storage and the trash room using wheeler bins, and we have 34 spots now. It made the space a lot more efficient when we got rid of that wall and that kind of extra door and clearances that you needed. And also there were comments prior we had, there was just there's kind of life safety things about the stairs being connected and needing a vestibule, and people are saying, oh, it's going to be hard with like a cargo bike or bag. So really having that direct entry onto the street allows for larger sized bicycles and can kind of keep the trash nice and manageable. So, obviously 29 bikes are required. There's probably more people than 29 bikes in the building. So we're really trying to get that as high as we can, working within the confines of the Somerville dimensional requirements for bike spots, which are quite large. It's like 3 by 8. So it should be very hefty. Sometimes things look very small in plans, but I'm sure you could fit 40 bikes in here if people weren't following the exact rule of the dimensional regulations. So that's the major update on that area in the plan. And then we want to share with you not only are UDC design options, where I think we had a couple of meetings with them and design evolved, but then trying to kind of interpret what we think is maybe something that is more agreeable, but obviously the board will have to kind of let us know on that. We'd also just included some images of kind of things going up in the neighborhood for reference. Two of these are ours, so maybe those aren't the best to include, but again, it's really a hodgepodge of architectural elements or super modern stuff from the 60s, stuff from the turn of the century. So this was the first thing that we presented to the UDC and actually to the community neighbors, our neighborhood meeting. And this is where that comment came up from one of the neighbors was like, I'm sick of you architects only doing black and white. So, we kind of took that and started to introduce some of that pastel scheme in some of the other versions. But again, this is a very long building, so the requirement is to break it up, and we obviously want to break up that mass so it feels a little bit more human scale or neighborhood scale. We had introduced a lot of wood paneling on the back towards that residential side just to kind of soften it. We didn't properly rendering all of the screening that would be there. But again, just to give a look and feel of what we had earlier presented to UDC. And this was the corner. The big comments before was like, this is a bold corner. You need to do something bold with it. And so that, as the project evolved, so did the corner in some schemes, although we presented 3 schemes at first. So this option was really trying to use some of the more traditional materials, that you might see in Somerville. So clapboard siding is what we're seeing here. The charcoal color, the white color, and then introducing, it's not a commercial ground floor, but a base that differentiates it from the floors above. So you're kind of seeing that with the wood paneling. We still feel like the entry is really strong. That really hasn't changed much in terms of, not its location, but always a differentiation of material at that to kind of break up those masses. It was very similar, to the back. Again, we didn't change that wood look. But you can kind of see here, you could imagine this is kind of more typical of what you might see in terms of the materiality of it. But lots of bays, lots of balconies to kind of break up the mass of it. And then the third option we had was similar to what we presented last week, but it's where we start to make this a more colorful building. Like, it's hard for Action and I as architects to do anything other than black and white. It's kind of our default. But again, introducing some slight color modifications to really distinguish the bays versus the rest of the material. So again, that's what you're seeing in this, breaking up the mass, 2 different color schemes. In the back, we tried to make it a lot more light, with still integrating those wood natural elements that face that residential side. From the corner, it's quite bland. And then I won't go into much detail about what we did last week, but this is where we introduced that corner feature that we think makes it really unique, makes it really pop, something different from buildings that people will hopefully remember when they might not know the address, but they might say, oh yeah, the place with those funky balconies on the corner, that's where I want to meet you. And so it kind of is quite different than the other schemes. So Akshat and I then worked to we love that geometry, but maybe introducing some different type of approach to the materials. So this is a new design option that the UDC didn't see, and this is new to everyone here, but we're introducing more of a traditional clapboard siding on that left side over here. We still do have some panelized materials here, wood, and then again, that right side is a little bit longer, so trying to break it up, that full color over there with the introduction of the wood between the bays. And then this is a standing seam metal siding. So kind of very clean, very elegant. You can kind of see that penthouse relates in form to that material, but is slightly lighter on the top. Still keeping those balconies, again, that kind of the kind of angled up approach, but introducing wood wherever we're doing that cutback over there. Kind of see it on the side, so you're seeing again some of that standing seam metal material. And then finally, we have one other option, which kind of takes it a step further, and really everywhere is fiber, clapboard siding, some board and batten siding. We're really trying to achieve that top feeling slightly different and really kind of feel like different buildings. We have window trims that are what you might see in a more traditional building. A cornice up here it's not as clean as the other ones, but again, it gives it a little prominence and then bringing that datum on the second floor to again help establish the base level as something different. What this looks like on the corner. We've kind of strayed away from the angled approach. Still really interesting geometry that's just created by the corner, but they're no longer dipping down. And then you can kind of see what that looks like on the side with some of the fiber cement siding and the trim, etc. So that's where we're at with the design.
And if we want to take a pause to talk about bikes and design before we segue into some other into the last topic.
Yeah, yeah, I'm split on whether the board wants to talk about the design variations that were presented today, or if we want to continue on. I'm happy to talk about the design options that you all presented tonight. But if my member, I see Kit's hand. I'm sorry, Kit, what's going on?
Hi. I just want to have a point of clarification. The bike room that was presented tonight looks slightly different than what was uploaded online or on CitizenServe. So I just want to make it known that mobility hasn't reviewed this exact plan, I believe, unless I might be wrong.
No, that's correct. There was
Okay.
trash cans blocking the door in the plan. So we made a revision so that it actually worked.
Okay. I just wanted to note that for the board.
Yeah.
So obviously, if the revised bike space is something the board is receptive to, I just obviously would like to include a condition that it's signed off on by the appropriate city staff. I would be surprised that if what you presented is, it's more than what you did before, and generally people like more and not less. But that would be a condition. Is just because we like it doesn't mean it's going to necessarily pass that particular municipal review. But so yeah, no, of course. Let's do this actually. I don't mind. Ryan, let me ask you this. How would you like to proceed? Do you want us to talk about everything all at once, or do you want us to go kind of silo by silo?
Maybe silo by silo. I mean, ultimately, my dream for tonight is to have an exhaustive discussion to where we can hopefully get everything out in the open and be in a position to move forward tonight, unless there's a showstopper.
Yeah.
So
okay, sounds good. Let's start with the design, and I'm gonna go first. I generally don't, but I'm gonna go first. Leaps, in my estimation, leaps and bounds better than what was presented last time, with particularly the last two revisions. I think it's a really well done concept of the way that this building can look. I think you guys kind of reimagined what this space could look like from the street. And I kind of either design, I think it was 4 and 5, right? I think both of them are just substantially better in my estimation than what was presented before. And I appreciate you kind of listening to the concerns of me and some of my colleagues about what this could look like. As one member, I think I tend to prefer number 5 to number 4, but either I think are just, like I said, a substantial step forward from where we were. So I would like to hear from my colleagues is about their estimation of where we stand now. The first I saw was Lynn, so I'm gonna call on Lynn first.
A question for you, Michael. You like the white clapboard?
I do. It's different, but it's also somewhat more traditional.
Well, this is a
Like,
hill that I will not die on. Um, but I saw design option 5 and I went, "Bleh."
okay, well,
Um,
let's
I,
talk. We can.
no, I mean there are some times when I'm it's purely I liked the green. I liked what they presented last time. I do like some of the different design features here. It's I it's purely a design taste difference between us. I don't think it's
Yeah, no,
substantial.
that's
But I like the clapboard least. But
yeah.
I think it was design option 3. Can you guys go to design option 3? No, 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 go.
This
No,
Yeah, like what it or you know, I
What the
I
UDC
think what's
approved.
so important with these big buildings is to convey that it looks as though it's a bunch of townhomes next to each other. They're not, and anyone who looks carefully, but maybe it was anyway. So, but
say,
I'll
Lynn, one of the things that I liked about both of the last two was the inclusion of kind of like the wood features for those balconies. I thought that added quite a
oh
bit.
yeah, let's
So,
go. That's
yeah, so we're on
yeah,
what
oh yeah, I like that. No, no.
design 4, right? Like, so I'm looking at that bottom left graphic, and I think that's beautiful. As one person, I really like that, and I know that there's other features that
No, I
and the wood siding on top right. I think that's a really nice looking building, inclusive of the white cloud. But that's just me. I think either
no,
of
no, no. I
the
agree with you on the wood, and I really liked um yeah, and that corner I think is just fabulous.
yeah,
That was just great kind of innovation when, when we saw where they started with that kind of plain front to
right.
a balcony like that. That was spot on. No, it's just the white clapboard. And again, not it was supposed to be a quick
Would you be
discussion.
happier if
Really,
the
Michael,
clapboard
you
just
like the
became
white
more wood?
clapboard? And you're like, yes, I do. And I was like, oh,
Yeah,
all
that's
right
fine.
then.
It's very Somerville. Would you prefer it if the clapboard was wood? Because the same similar to the middle panel there. Because I'd be happy with that too.
Um, let's hear what Amelia and Luke have to
Yeah.
say.
All right. Hey, we're not the UDC. We don't have to dig too deep. Let's go with. I just happened to see Luke's hand first.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Couple quick thoughts. And again, I missed the last meeting, so this is a little bit of perspective from scratch also on the designs. I really like the pointy balconies. It seems like people generally like that, so I just thought that was a cool design feature. So thumbs up for that. For what it's worth, these discussions make me realize my taste maybe is kind of basic, but they all look kind of good to me, and I end up even in this back and forth right now, I'm frantically scrolling across my PDF to try and track which one you're each referencing. And I just think any of them built, would look like a cool new multifamily building to me. So I'll go with anything we pick. Honestly, the question I had for the team is just one, I'd be curious what your preference is. And is your preference the one that was presented last week? It seemed like maybe not, and that was more going with what the UDC was recommending. I'll ask a few questions together because they're related, and then curious for a response. So, this is a domain where I really would lean towards deferring to your design expertise. So I'm curious what your preference is. One, and this is about this project, but also others. I've always wondered, and I've never just asked this, is there ever a material cost difference between the choices you're making here, or is it always marginal enough that that's not a big factor in this decision? And then I guess related to all that is even if you have a preference, are you just saying we'll literally, we won't put up a fight with anything that the board says as long as you approve it tonight?
I'll take the first part and then I'll let Phil take the last part. So in terms of the design, we are not particularly married to any of these designs, frankly. We think they all, well, we like the pointy balconies. We think that those are definitely a defining feature of the building and really like a statement piece. So as long as we have the pointy balconies, we think that makes a statement. We're not, we got steered to what we presented to you by the UDC, and I'll just leave it at that. We're not married to any of those designs. To us, we want what the board in general is most favorable to, and that in terms of the cladding, there definitely are expense trade-offs, especially when you get into a building of this size. When you get into some of the paneling, the fiber cement siding is probably one of the less expensive components of the building. But when you start getting into some of the paneling and the wood, and particularly which we're not presenting masonry, we kind of have PTSD from masonry and other projects. There's definitely you can start getting into more expensive materials, and I'm starting to veer off of my track in terms of cost differences between the materials. Maybe Phil can highlight that a little bit better.
You all might be opposed if I suggested you made it, cladded with marble and gilt with my name on it.
Yes, we'd have
Okay,
a pro we
okay,
would have a problem with that. Yeah, if you
okay,
wanted the
okay.
building to be 100%, brick, that would be really, really problematic. Just it's takes longer. It's much more expensive, way more coordination in the construction for buildings of this size.
I think you know this board's position on full course bricks, so we'll.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Obviously, it's substantially different, and for this type of building, right, wood frame, materials matter a lot, right? You can't really hang heavy terracotta, so that's kind of a reason why a lot of these projects look similar. Balance Architects is a firm we really pride ourselves on, like, okay, there is a constraint. Like maybe that constraint might be fiber cement to make the numbers pencil, but we really try and approach it in a way that it looks substantially different, substantially, you know, less cookie cutter than what you might see, not just AZEK, which is PVC trim everywhere. And so this is like a fiber cement approach that similar materials, but looks substantially different than, say, the clapboard siding over there. So that's kind of the material standpoint. I will happily put up a little bit of a fight. It's very rare that we get to see buildings that actually have color, and it kind of resonated with me when that neighbor made that comment. Most of the stuff that we do, actually those examples that were shown down the street, many of these kind of end up looking, kind of black and white and a little bit of metal, a little bit of wood. So when you do color, it's really hard to do color. There are some buildings in Union Square which are very colorful and maybe are a little bit controversial. So when we do it, we try and do it in a really simple way where it's clean, it's elegant, it's not variations and stripes. That's extremely hard to pull off and have it pull off well. So my preference is obviously this, but we also love those two options. So that's where I stand.
Helpful, thanks. Mr. Chair, I had a question / quick thought on the bike parking side of things. Do we want to do that? Is that all part of this right now, or?
So let's do ordinarily. Look, I would say let's do everything. I kind of asked Ryan how we wanted to proceed on the discussion, and we kind of talked about a siloed discussion just to make sure that
all good. Yeah,
which is fine by me. So let's pause that discussion for the time being and just talk about design so we can at least figure out, is the design something that we're comfortable moving forward with? And then we can talk about bikes, and then we can talk about unit mix, unit size mix. So, did you have anything else that you wanted to raise on the design aspect of it? Okay. Next person I saw was Amelia.
I just wanted to say thank you to the applicant team for the time and effort to bring us these additional options. I am always sensitive to when the board sort of goes too far into a design critique, but I really think that these are much more sophisticated options, and really appreciate the sort of additional time to think through them. So thank you.
Lee and then John.
Thank you as well to the design team. Appreciate your work on this. I'm kind of in Luke's camp where, I think pretty much I like aspects of all of them. I did like the wood facing the residential houses. That was I thought it was a nice touch. And I have a question for the design team and also my colleagues. I like number 5, but do you think that it would be quite dark? I guess that's my only concern, that it's a lot of dark. It's very striking, but just a question.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to kind of distinguish those buildings, and there's some beautiful buildings that are done with really tasteful dark colors. There's one on Cambridge and I think on Cambridge Street in Inman Square, right across the street from I think that Broadway Bicycle School. It can be done very elegantly. I think when we turn the corner, certainly don't want it to be black all around. Just a small wrap going from Newton, and then we transition to kind of the lighter white colors like we're showing right here. And then I think it really lightens it up. So it has to be done well, but I think it can be achieved.
Thank you.
All right. John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to start off by commending the applicant team and the design options that are presented here. I would say that between options 4 and 5, I'm also a bit torn. I actually like a lot of the wood, and I would love to see more clapboard, but I know that's not what we're discussing here. The question that I do have
Jahan,
here.
we're in Somerville. We can do a whole building full of like white plastic cladding. We're fine. Home Depot will thank us.
Not sure how the applicant team will feel that, but I do have my preferences,
UBC
which
will
I've
love it.
stated. But I do have a question for the applicant team, and this is looking ahead, 5 years, 10 years down the road. I agree, and I appreciate the color. Having color, it's very striking. In your experience, what has been the aging process of the exteriors with color? I mean, are we talking about any concerns around fading or tinting or other areas that you would like to discuss or mention here?
Well, one of the conditions by the UDC for the materials that we are going to use is that they had to be through color. So that means all the way, basically it's fully impregnated with color. So, I mean, these things do fade in the sun sometimes, right? When sun's hitting it for years, but they have warranties, 20-year warranties that are associated with it. There have been bad panels in the past, but because this is the majority of what people are using in the US to build multifamily, they've gotten a lot better over time. So I'm not very concerned with that fading.
Okay, that helps answer the question. Thank you so much for that, and thank you, Mr. Chair, as well.
Yeah, so I think collectively we're down to options 4 and 5, kind of split. And with that, I'm kind of the opinion that unless anybody's gotten opposition insofar as the design, it would be kind of my recommendation to leave either 4 or 5 up to the discretion of planning staff as they discuss with the applicant, which is something that we've done historically in the past when there have been a number of design options that we're not 100% sold on or not. So if that's something that the board seems to be aligned with, I would like to incorporate that as part of our conditions, that 4 or 5 be left up to staff, because I'm not going to hold us to really pin them down on either one of these, because I think both of them are meritorious. So, anybody have any objection to that? Okay. Let's talk about bikes next. Uh, Luke, I think you were, yep, I see your hand now. I know you had comment or questions about the revised bike space, so let's hear from you on that one.
I'm just curious if planning staff has any sense. We talked about this a couple months ago with the bike storage for the project near Porter Square, and just curious, and understand if it's hard to answer on the fly, but what the experience has been in recent years, and if I hope I'm getting this right, that it's one bike's parking spot internal per unit is the requirement for new multifamily projects, and what's the actual usage looking like? Is that like many of us are cyclists in the city. We certainly see a lot of cyclists, and from my vantage point, like I truly can't guess. Am I imagining that those are all packed to the gills because so many people are biking in Somerville now, or is it actually in practice pretty far from one per unit today? Anyhow, just would be helpful for this and for future projects if we have any sense.
This is Kit. Through the chair, I don't think that I have an answer to that, but I could definitely check in with mobility so we have that information for future projects.
I can speak to it anecdotally as someone who lived in a multi-unit condo building on Elm Street in Somerville, near Porter Square. I lived in around a 30-unit building. And I mean, this was a few years ago. This was like probably about 12, 15 years ago. But the bike room, I ride bikes. I had three bikes in the bike room, and I was an anomaly there. There was a lot of abandoned bikes. I took a couple bikes with me when I left that had been abandoned for probably 5, 10 years. A lot of bikes gathering dust. So I don't know. I think there's everybody puts their own perspective on bike usage. The requirement is one bike space per unit, and I think that's probably sufficient. But we're happy to have more than what's required to um, be future ready. Should biking become a more preferred modality? But I would be curious to see the data as well on bike utilization in buildings. But like I said, we're happy to be future ready. It's better to have more bike spaces than not enough. So we're fine to make those accommodations here.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I do think that being future ready perspective is an important one, especially in a location like this. My quick anecdotal thing is I bike to an office building downtown that has a bunch of bike parking spaces, and in good weather on a Tuesday, which is like the peak day for people going into the office now, the sides of the bike racks are really tough to get because everybody's got bigger e-bikes now that don't fit into the slots. So that's where the traffic jams are. And then there's a bunch of like empty spots for the skinnier regular regular ones. So anyhow, actually that the final thought is just appreciating the spikes for the larger cargo and e-bikes and anything we can do to shift for more of those. I suspect where being future ready will be most important.
Amelia, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to riff on Luke's question for a moment, if I may, which is if we're thinking about bike utilization, like I'm very grateful for the applicant's efforts to sort of enhance the bike room situation here, and I think that it is good and forward thinking to do so. I wonder as we think more broadly about this topic if there's a distinction between a project like this that is so proximate to so much transit infrastructure and a project like a project that was going forward with a minimum of parking, but which was 3/4 of a mile from the nearest rail station. I would feel much more strongly that sort of pushing for cargo bike capacity was like a high priority for the board's review. So I wonder if we think about utilization, how much there is sort of a breakdown there, because I think of cargo bikes as a trade-off for cars as opposed to a trade-off. Like, anyway, so just just going on your whole thing. Thank you. I have no comments on the improvements. These are great.
As somebody who is a mile from both of my closest T stops, you know, my bike is in, the basement of another house, not in the city. So it just doesn't suit my needs. But I will defer to my colleagues who do bike in and around the city, and it seems like what you've done kind of mirrors what people are looking for, and I'm happy with the changes if other people are, right? This is not my area, particularly of expertise or experience. So I see Lynn's hand, who is also a biker.
Yeah, biker. Um,
A biker.
thank you. Thank you to the applicant team for adding additional space for bikes. Makes my heart swell. I saw that in preparing for today's meeting, and I was really happy about it. Just a small antidote. My son, who just graduated from college, he's 23, is living at home this summer, and I was telling him about the meeting we had and what my comment was, and blah, 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 and I was ranting to him. And he thought that I was way out of line because, again, target demographic, like moving in, right? He and his friends are getting job offers with obscene amount of money, so they could potentially be moving into these one bedroom or studios or whatnot. And he says none of them bike. And he thinks I'm an anomaly, thinking that everybody's going to be biking all the time, except Luke and Michael do as well. So I'm not that much of an anomaly. So I'm really glad you got 34 spots. Yeah, but just giving you comments from the, you know, peanut gallery.
Well, that's interesting to hear because frankly, your son and his generation, I think, is our target market for this building, or one of the target markets. It's, close, very close proximity to public transit, very close to Union Square, which is a very, cool and hip place to be. And we see this building appealing to, young urban professionals, and maybe people downsizing from, their larger homes in Somerville, and giving way to larger families to expand into those larger homes that the downsizers don't no longer need. And maybe they bike, maybe they don't, but maybe there'll be a few zealots in there who want to have their 3 bikes like me, and they'll have extra space.
Yeah, I mean, my son bikes. There's no way that he could be my offspring and not bike, but he doesn't love it the way that I do, and he views it more utilitarian. And his friends were mostly like, "Oh, it's 3/4 of a mile to campus," so, and none of them have any plans to keep going. But you never know. You never know. But I do think it's forward looking. I do think that having more bike storage in a multifamily is going to be better than not having it. I also appreciate the comments on the size requirements um, that Somerville has, and I think that in practice, after the building is built, et cetera, that more bikes may be able to fit in here, like the little itty bitty bikes that kids have, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm really happy with this and ready to move off. But I had to convey the conversation that I had with my son.
This is going to transition into our next line of discussion, but I will say, Ryan, you raised the issue of people downsizing. My parents are going to be among those people, and they are in their mid 70s. There is no way, shape, or form that they are biking around anywhere. The last time I think I went on a bike ride with my parents was 1996, and that was the last time that they sat on a bike. So I'm not necessarily convinced that the downsizing population from larger units in Somerville are going to be among the population that will be among the biking population. I don't know if that Venn diagram is very tight, but let's have a discussion on item number 3. Going into my John McLaughlin, group here, issue 3, unit size. Back in PBS days, back when we actually funded them. So let's talk about Unix.
Sure. Yeah. So I think this picture that Phil has on the screen right now is actually helpful. Yeah, as we mentioned before, this is a just under 9,000 square foot lot, so it's I would say relative smaller on the smaller side of the urban infill lots. And it's got a very unique, shape to it. It's being narrow in the front or narrow to the rear as opposed to long and deep. It's slender and long on the front, and then it's got that angle on the side. So, we're trying to maximize for livability and habitability here. And the unit mix that we have is could we do more ones in studios? Probably. But if we incorporate 3 bedrooms into this footprint, it essentially requires us to combine units, squish some things around, given the design of the windows and the fenestration. It becomes a real challenge for us, as well as, we'd have stacking. So essentially it's very hard to just do, 1 3-bedroom or 2 3-bedrooms. They need to be stacked. So now we're getting into, having to eliminate units to accommodate 3 bedrooms. We're a 29 unit project, which under the ordinance, does not require a 3-bedroom mix. If we go over that, then we are, but we're purposely up to that line because going above 30 units would change the total layout of the building and make us essentially have to combine units. So we're back again below the 29 unit threshold. So we've been very conscientious throughout this process to comply with the ordinance in terms of all dimensional requirements, all setbacks, all sizing, all heights, and unit mixes. And we looked at initially incorporating 3 bedrooms, and it didn't make sense from a layout perspective. Like I said, we're trying to maximize for habitability, usability, marketability, livability ultimately, and incorporating 3 bedrooms into this lot design isn't feasible for us. And for that reason, we stuck with the no 3-bedroom into the mix.
I'm going to push back a little bit on this just because I'm not sure how much of that is something that's translating to me, right? So we've had locations. You're close enough to the T stop. You're well and good within the transit zone. We just had a building basically next door to the Porter Square T stop that said we're going to put in 3 bedrooms. We have pushed back on other developments that are reasonably close, maybe not quite as close as you are, but close enough to other Green Line stops. Pretty closely in the Ball Square area and pretty close in the Lagoon Square area. We've said, put in 1 or 2, make it work. This is what the city has needed, and this is what we want. And they worked with us. They haven't given us, 100% 3 bedrooms. That's not what we're asking for. We're asking for some reasonable discussion on how we can get to 1, 2, however you're going to make it. So we have had positive discussions and negotiations with other people building buildings of similar sizes within similar distances and closer distances to transit stops than you are, who have been willing to work with this board on what the city's wanted. The thing that concerns me a little bit is kind of how you started off this presentation is we looked at exactly what the zoning required and we did absolutely nothing to put us above the line that would have required us to do X. As a lawyer, that makes me say, you're not acting in good faith when it comes to that part of the discussion. Okay? That's not what this board has ever expected of developers. We have always asked for you to work with us in looking what the city wants for development. What the city has wanted and needed with development is bigger family-sized housing. I had a discussion offline with somebody else the other week on why are Somerville housing prices still going up when Somerville is doing all this work to build additional housing, affordable housing, and things like that. And the response that I had to this particular individual, again, offline, not part of this discussion, was in my estimation, it's not that you can't find a studio or a one bedroom or a one bedroom plus den in Somerville. That's all we're building. The housing stock that's going up and staying up are those housing stock and unit mixes that are two bedroom above because you cannot find them. There's a reason the house next to my parents just sold for cash for $2.5 million. Okay. That is not a satisfactory response to this board member. I cannot believe that you cannot put in one of them. And the way that you couched it is, I know what the zoning required, and we did everything we possibly effing could to not get above the line to make sure that we had to do it. That's what I heard from you, and that's not satisfactory to me. So I'm not satisfied with that particular response if that's how you meant it, because that's how it came across to me. And I would like to have the opportunity to have you correct my understanding of what you said, but that is what I heard.
Okay. Yeah, no, please let me, that is not how I meant to be heard, and that is not what I meant to say if that's how it came across. My point with the going up to the 29 units was if we go above 29 units to 30 units, then we are required to have 20% three bedrooms. And that was my statement on going above the 30 unit threshold. That threw everything out the window for us. So that not going up to 29 units and not being physically impossible to add a three bedroom somewhere in the building. I'm not going to saying that Phil's, our architect's not creative enough to find one three bedroom. If that was the requirement from the board, and if that's the statement that's being made, is that we need to incorporate one three bedroom into our building, I'm sure we could find a way to incorporate one three bedroom. It's a matter of, once you get above that, probably in the basement or the garden level, I could say, we could probably reconfigure things in the garden level to where it's not stackable. It's where we get into the first floor, and then now we're stacking above that. It's a little hard to just shoehorn one three bedroom, and I don't want to speak out of turn in terms of architecture, but shoehorning one three bedroom on the ground level with the stacking of the plumbing and everything, it becomes problematic. And also from a design fenestration as well, with how the other units above it are laid out with the windows and the fenestration of the windows, that definitely becomes a challenge. So it's kind of hard to shoehorn on the first, second, and third floor, any of those floors, just throw in a one three bedroom unit. So that was my statement, is it's a little hard to just add one three bedroom. And then if we're adding four three bedrooms or three bedrooms, now we're reconfiguring the whole building, squeezing units, eliminating units, and that does have a feasibility impact to the project that makes it not feasible for us.
I understand that, right? I will also say this. You are not the first person that I've said this to. You are not the first development team that this board has said that to. And yet somehow miraculously things have worked out. So I'm going to leave it at that for right now with my comments, and I'd like to recognize Amelia and then Lynn, who are the two people that I saw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Please, I apologize even as I say this, because I'm going to undermine you, and I'm sorry for that. When I think about the projects that we have permitted, that we have gotten the developers to add additional three bedroom units, in trying to go through that mental list of them, I can't think of that many that are under construction. And I'm starting to feel like we have permitted a lot of mid-sized residential buildings that have not broken ground. And I know we always want to optimize across as many criteria as possible, but and I don't think that that will necessarily be the straw that breaks the camel's back here, but if I'd like to just think of this from the lens of like, if this development team thinks that they have a financeable project at this moment in time, speaking as a developer, like that is a rarity right now. And I'm starting to feel like the tide hasn't turned in a long time. And I certainly don't want to back down from our commitment to, our, articulating the needs of our long-term planning strategies. But I also don't want to make perfect the enemy of good here. So I just want to raise that as a point for consideration, or for discussion from other board members. I do think that I will also, while we're saying things we've said before, I will again put forward my alternative that I often suggest when we're hearing that things are really tight and that a third bedroom unit is difficult to manage, which is the city also has a great deal of need for accessible, affordable units. And I would welcome us to consider, if we're hearing that a third bedroom is not possible, whether making at least one of the designated affordable units a group 2 accessible unit is something that would be architecturally more feasible. Perhaps 2 of them if that felt feasible. I know that that has a small added cost margin, but perhaps less so than sort of a full redesign of other units. So I don't know how other board members feel about that as a trade-off, but I think it creates a different set of dimensional challenges that, depending on the layout, may or may not be easier. So thank you for your consideration.
Never apologize for putting forward your position here. I will also respectfully point out we have permitted this is actually going to be a discussion point, hopefully at next meeting. I know Alvaro's listening, as to how many lab buildings we've permitted that are currently untenanted. So I think there's a point to be made about we can permit as much as we want. It doesn't mean that that's going to happen. I do see Lynn and then Jahan.
Lynn, you're on mute.
Thank you, Michael and Amelia, for your perspectives. I'm going to offer a slightly different one, and one in, I think, January I wanted to kind of bring to the board, but I might suggest that we look at the actual data as a board the next time we get together and there's time for an administrative bit. I saw in my property tax bill that the city had analysis on how many one-bedroom multifamily, et cetera, for us to kind of look at what the existing stock is and what we think, and maybe perhaps get some information from, if there's any marketing data, on what the demand is. Because as a person who just moved here almost 3 years ago, I wanted a 2-bedroom. I could only find a 3-bedroom. My downstairs neighbor found a 4-bedroom and needs 2 bedrooms. And and again, the college set that just graduated, they're all looking for 1-bedrooms. If you follow online all the housing, Facebook groups looking for housing, it's people who have 3 bedrooms that are looking to find somebody to fill another. It doesn't feel like families. Families kind of want their single family homes, which is why, Michael, the home next to you went for so much. So I I would really like for us to see some data on this on Somerville, that there are families who can't find a place to live and that are turning away. Um, and I liked Amelia's compromise here, because I know I'm going to be a minority voice on this. And Amelia's compromise of like, well, if you can't do 3-bedroom because of, lining up the plumbing, et cetera, makes perfect sense. Is there something else that you could do either on affordability or accessibility? So, Michael, if I may suggest that at some point in the next month or two, we try to see what data is available and for us to kind of go, because this issue comes up a lot for us as a board. But if we can kind of understand where the city is and where the demand is, I think if we can be grounded on numbers a little bit versus our feelings, it might serve us all a little bit better. So,
And I totally
thank
agree
you.
with you. I totally agree with you on looking at what the actual data looks like today. One of the things that I kind of referenced it a minute ago, one of the things that I asked Alvaro to do some research on and get us some feedback on is how many of these lab buildings that we've permitted are actually now tenanted, because we've got a couple of lab buildings that are coming up before us, and I think this
Another one's
fits.
coming,
I think
19
I
stories.
think this comes right within that same
Yeah.
vein. It's like, okay, fine, we have zoning that allows X, but what is it that we want, and what is actually happening with what we're permitting? So I think that's a valuable piece of data to move forward on. Um, I think Amelia's suggestion and potential compromise is something that's valuable to discuss. I'm not certain that as one member I'm going to be on board necessarily with that, but we will see where it is when we come out, probably in a few weeks, based on the nature of this discussion tonight, because we are not in a place, in my estimation, to take a vote on this particular application this evening. But Lynn, did you have anything else that you wanted to add before I move along? 'Cause I don't want to cut you
Oh, no,
off.
not at all. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
The next person that I saw was Jahan, and then I see Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, the unmute button escaped me for a moment. So I definitely appreciate all the thoughts shared here. The advantage of going a little bit later is to be able to absorb the sentiments of the fellow board members. I do think that when it comes to unit mix, I am mindful of the constrained capital markets conditions at this time. However, I do want to see what's feasible. I mean, I do want us to be able to at least have a conversation around the feasibility of a three-bedroom unit. I know the applicant team had mentioned that there is a possibility of that, and I do want to see it through. If that fails, or if that's highly challenged, then I agree with certainly agree with Madam Vice Chair's suggestions of expanding out at least affordability, accessibility, because from my vantage point, either the unit mix has to uh, accommodate three bedrooms, which would be a more diverse unit mix, or progressing the accessibility or affordability goals. So I share your sentiments, Mr. Chair, that this project should not be voted on until the applicant team has had ample time to review and see what's feasible for their project, because ultimately we do want the project to succeed and also ensure that there is housing built with components of the diverse unit mix, affordable housing, and accessibility. So that's all I had to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jahan. The next and last person I see right now is Michael. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had one statement and then one question. So first is I also wanted to weigh in here on the affordability unit mix combination. So obviously, I really appreciate Vice Chair Buff's comments about accessibility and affordability kind of overlapping. You recall during my last couple of questions of the last meeting, I was interested in seeing some more support on accessibility here. So Mr. Chair, I've always been a big pusher for, multifamily or multi-bedroom projects. I think increasingly I am worried about affordability, not necessarily the same unit mix like I was, a couple months ago, just based on some of the feedback from neighborhood meetings that we've seen, based on feedback from people coming to meetings and talking about their concerns around projects. There's a lot of questions around affordability. So I think I would double down on Amelia's ask here. I would say, not only should we be looking for two group two affordable units, but like I would even want to review if there's additional affordability that could be brought into other units in the building as well. And if that means that like we've got to give on some other relief to do that, I think I'd love to see just kind of the push and take here a little bit. I think the more we can find a way to not build luxury units, the better from my perspective, because I think we do have a surplus of units. Again, we'd love to see data on this, but anything we can do to support affordability here, I think is an important highlight. So my one question was also during the last meeting, I asked a little bit more about the electrical transformers, and I do see that there's a permit condition that electrical transformers are not allowed above ground. But I also had a question to just follow up with staff on whether or not that this would trigger a material modification if they did come back with a request to bring the equipment above ground. I was wondering if anyone on staff had kind of chased that down and just confirmed that the current permit condition is sufficient to trigger a new review with this board.
This is Kit. I think that it typically is fairly case by case. So if the board did want to make a more specific condition, maybe a bit more in line with the other condition about kind of streamlining any changes straight to the board, I think that would make sense if that was something that the board wanted, just
Okay.
to clear the air or clear any
Yeah.
confusion in the future.
Yep. Yep. Appreciate that. And I think I don't want to mess with standard things that are met by staff review. It's definitely not my intent for this project, but this one issue in particular, I think is material enough that I, as one member, would love to see it come back to us if it were invalid.
Yeah, I think the planning board has had some recent cases where those have come back, and in some have even needed to also go to the zoning board if a variance was needed. But I think the majority of cases where a transformer would then need to be the location of a transformer changes, they do come back to the planning board, in my experience.
Okay. Well, I mean, again, it doesn't sound like we're going to vote on this tonight. So if we got to take another round of looking at it, that's okay. I just want to make sure we're clear about it. Thank you.
Can I chime in on the transformer very quickly?
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a big issue in Somerville, and it was huge during COVID, where there was availability of manhole transformers and having to transfer. Part of that notch in the building that's there was just like a worst case scenario. So obviously we come back to the board, but we've had these worst case scenarios, and we want to make sure that it wouldn't materially ruin our building should something awful with Eversource happen. So we appreciate that concern and comment, and we don't want transformers messing up buildings.
Thank you, and I apologize. Well, actually, I don't apologize. I sympathize with how painful it is not to know this information up front. So I do appreciate that this isn't something you can control.
In regards to accessibility, I mean, conceptually, I think as a development team, we're open to the discussion around making the affordable units group 2 accessible. I have no idea what that means from an architectural standpoint, and yeah, I think we can figure that out. I think we can figure that out. So I think as a development team, that's something that we're very open and amenable to as a I guess the word compromise. We don't view that as a big compromise to in terms of making the affordable units also accessible on group 2 level. That's something that we'd be more than happy to go above and beyond to, I don't want to say gain the favor of the board, but to as a way to go above and beyond, because you said we're doing the minimum, and this is one area where we can go above and beyond. So we're completely open to opening up a few more of the affordable units and making them group 2 accessible.
Seeing no other questions by members of the planning board, I think, Ryan, you and the team have a little bit of work to do in the next couple of weeks to come back to us with maybe some creative revisions of both the unit mix, kind of Avenue A, Avenue B, Amelia's proposed compromise, um, and some ideas on transformer issues or further clarification that Michael might need. So I think we've got a number. I think we've significantly narrowed down the points that the board is looking to have some clarification on. Um, and I think we're getting closer to a finish line without promising that one is immediately in the future. I'm gonna just welcome you all to come back and see where we land.
Fair enough.
And
I know,
I just before I stop, I do want to thank you already on the substantial work that you and the team have done in addressing some of our other and earlier concerns as well. I think we've all seen that you have been willing and excited to work kind of with where our collective minds are on making this a project that we're happy to support. So.
great. Just so I'd like to make sure I understand I guess the ask or just to be completely clear, so that hopefully the next time we come back here, we tweak the right buttons and hit the right mark and get something that the board can be behind. It sounds like the unit mix is the final remaining, the largest remaining component here to be considered. Is it the position of the board that in order to be approved that we need to have 3 bedrooms in our mix here?
So I haven't read the comments of my colleagues for that to be dispositive. I think that is something that has been identified as a concern by me and some of my colleagues. I know that Amelia has put forward a uh, potential alternative that is something that the board can consider, and I think we'd like to see your read on that proposed alternative as well. So I think we're looking at a couple of different ways that we can revise how the units in this building operate, whether it's by size or by accessibility, availability. Does the board think that I have appropriately kind of like summarized where our concerns lie? And Michael, is your concern in Ray the Transformer kind of addressed, or do you want some more insight into that?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything from the applicant team on that topic. I think it's just clarification from staff. It sounds like the applicant team is on board with everything.
I do see, is that Alvaro, are you raising your hand over there?
Yes. Before the board continues, I just wanted to note that for the current agenda of June 18th, we do have a variety of topics that are already in the agenda. So I just want to warn that of capacity. And also note that Kit would not be present. She's going to be out that week. So just to know that the case planner, if this item is continued to June 18th, the case planner will not be present for that.
Something that I would ask, is the case plan to be present, and also I am cognizant of the fact that the planning board doesn't take up more than a certain number of agenda items on a particular evening. And we've already got a number of others, so this may need to be pushed to the meeting thereafter.
Just July 16th.
Currently,
So it's a
Yeah.
month and a half from now.
it might be a month, might be 4 weeks. So I think the next meeting is the 18th. I think the meeting after that is like the 3rd or something. Is that right?
No, it will be July 16th. There's no
16th,
meeting
okay.
during the July 4th week.
Okay. And I don't believe I'll be present during that meeting, so. Curly though.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the late question, Mr. Chair. It occurred to me, I wanted to ask about the decision not to go above the threshold where you would be required to do a number of 3-bedroom units. is that, my question is that, is that a decision because the 3-bedroom units are less marketable, or is it the economics of building the building with that configuration, or some combination of those things?
It's a combination of both those things. I really didn't want to, I really wanted to avoid getting into the discussion about 3 bedrooms and condo buildings, frankly. But since we're going there, I'll just go ahead and go there. I'll give you we're very active in the development community, and we've built buildings that have 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. We just finished a 6-unit project in Central Square in Cambridge, which I think is fairly comparable to this demographic in Union Square. The 1 and 2-bedroom units sold during construction without sight unseen before the sheetrock went up. The 3-bedroom units all waited until they went out, until they were completely finished, staged, and then they sat for 30 to 60 days, and they were sold to a variety of different people, but none of them had kids. Surprisingly, none of them had kids. So this narrative around family units for market rate 3-bedroom condominiums, I think is not an accurate narrative in the market. And I think if you talk to other people who are building buildings like this, that's what you would find. The 3-bedroom units the market rate 3 bedrooms. I understand the affordable 3-bedroom units are very desirable for that market, but the market rate units are not going. If you look at this building, a 3-bedroom unit isn't going to a family with kids. They want the townhouse where they have their own private space. They want the single family homes. So that's part one, marketability. And then number two, just back to the actual layout of this building, specifically to this building, not even worrying about marketability, is it changes. If we go above 30 units, it changes the whole mix of the building, the fenestration, and it require we can't go above 30 units and have 3 bedrooms at the same time and have what we believe are the most desirable livable units. It makes the units less livable, more cramped. It has to, we have to lose some units. So for this lot size, cramming some 3 bedrooms in there, it just isn't feasible. Well, if it's the board's, requirement to show that, let us show you that just from a form standpoint, we can do that. But we're jamming a square peg into a round hole, trying to get 3-bedroom units into this footprint of a building. And so it's two things. It's the marketability, which I don't, it detracts from the marketability and the financeability of the project because those 3 bedrooms are harder to sell. And it's a burden on the project from a form standpoint.
Thank you.
In a place where we know kind of where the discussion is going to be in a few weeks. So I'll ask all of you to come back and give us some options, and we can continue the discussion at that point. Right now, what I'd like to do is, at least for the purpose of this discussion, move to continue this agenda item to the 18th of June, just in case other people also continue and we end up having more flexibility on our calendar than we anticipate. But it may be at the necessity of this be continued further at that point. But right now, we're going to continue it to the 18th, seconded by Amelia. And Alvaro, can we have a roll call, please?
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Carly Cooper,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
I abstain.
Amelia Above,
Aye.
Michael Capuano.
This agenda item is continued. Thank you all very much. See you at some point in the near future.
Looking forward to it. Thank you all.
Thanks. Good evening.
I do not believe there is any other business before the planning board this evening as we round 8:30. Does anybody else have something they would like to raise for the good of the meeting before we adjourn and have some supper. Okay. I will say we have both NHL and NBA playoffs going on tonight. I really don't want to have to root for either of the teams in the NBA finals.
Not tonight.
Not tonight. I thought it was tonight. I thought it was 8:30.
You got a night off from worrying about the Knicks winning the finals. Yeah.
Oh, gross. Nasty. I thought it was tonight. Okay, well, at least I have to worry about NHL then. Okay, fine. Okay, cool. Who wants to adjourn? John, stop smiling. You a Knicks guy? Please tell me you're not a Knicks guy. I know you are. I know you are.
I'm a Celtics. I actually have season tickets with my friends for the last 10 years. Huge Celtics fan.
Wow. Why you been holding out?
Why are we
wow.
not better friends?
No, no one asked.
Open the floodgates.
Awesome. All right. At 8:27, the chair moves to adjourn, seconded by Amelia. Roll call, please.
Stefan Habib,
Aye.
Lynn Richards,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Carly Cooper,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Amelia Abuff,
Hi.
Michael Capuano.
Thank you all very much. See you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Have a
Everybody.
good night.
Thank you. Good night.